Hello everyone and welcome to our next Dark Souls playthrough. Prepare to Die edition on the PC, 1080p 60 frames per second. I'm actually going to be running at 72 frames per second since I have a 144Hz monitor and it really won't cause too many issues. In this playthrough, we're going to go ahead and do a Solaire cosplay. So we're going to get started in New Game and we're going to set this character up to look and have all the features that Solaire would have. And by look like Solaire, what we really mean is the armor set, the shield, his weapon, and basically he drops everything for us, pretty much. We're also going to use fate spells just like he would. We'll use more than he uses, because I think the only thing he uses is basically the lightning spell. Not sure which one it is, but we'll incorporate some other fate spells as well. So that might be deviating a little bit from Solaire, but that's okay. We'll play a male, since Solaire is a male, and I think what we'll do is play actually as a cleric to start out, which is very unusual for me. Master Key, pretty much as always. And then we'll be Far East Traveler with a short hairstyle. And we'll make that hair, how about dark brown? As per all my playthroughs, we're going to skip dialogue and cutscenes because you've probably seen it 100,000 times, or at least you can get it on your own if that's something you really want. And we'll unequip this useless thing. Okay. For discussion points, I've been thinking a lot about it, and I can never quite put my finger on exactly what I want to discuss for each playthrough, and as of right now, I'm still debating a couple different topics. In my Bloodborne Whippet playthrough, we're discussing the early internet, and also early internet gaming. It's a very interesting discussion, and so even if you're not interested in Bloodborne, I would recommend you check out that playthrough just for the discussion alone, because if you weren't around for the early internet, you know, you were born maybe in the late 90s or even after 2000, then you may learn a lot about what it was like to be around during the very, very early days, even before the internet was called the internet. There was a time when we just called it going online. Before the days of www, HTTP websites and all that stuff. Yes, there was a time before then, before cell phones and all that stuff. Back when we had to walk to school both ways, uphill in the snow all year long, because it snowed everywhere all year long, and it was uphill no matter what direction you went. So for this one, East-West Shield, that's interesting. I'd totally forgotten that that's what the cleric starts with. I wonder if there's some sort of lore reason for that. With this playthrough, we may take our time a little bit more and check out some things in the world and maybe kind of look around and see what we can see, but it's not necessarily going to be a lore or story playthrough, because other people do that better than I can or care to do. You can run up and backstab this guy if you want, or you can just, bam, kill him one shot, 100 even. Playing with the DS Fix at 1080p, so that's 1080. Or 1920 by 1080 at 72 frames per second, recorded at 60 frames per second, uploaded at 60 frames per second. We are using regular old Shadowplay, so the quality will probably be a bit lower than what you saw in my last high quality playthrough, because those files, one single recorded episode, the original file, the raw file, was 135 to 170 some gigabytes each, so that was just insane, and not something I want to try to continue moving onward. It just really caused a lot of delays in terms of how long it took to transfer that file to my video editing computer, how long it took to edit, how long it took to render, how much space it took. Today's drink of choice is, whoops, I picked up my mug thinking there would be coffee in it, and there wasn't, so let me pour some coffee. Also, I do apologize, my Bloodborne Whippet playthrough episode 3 was with the headset microphone, and apparently you have to push the microphone lower than your mouth, because what ended up happening was you got a lot of those those sounds when it hit the microphone. There's no sufficient pop filter for it, so it caused that nasty like popping sound that pop filters are designed to prevent. And I have a pop filter on this Yeti USB microphone. This is our Canvas Talisman. We're going to get another talisman, which is actually the one that Solaire uses. And I think Solaire drops it. I think Solaire drops his entire set, which is incredibly convenient for the purposes of cosplay, because we meet Solaire very early on, and boom, he drops his whole entire armor set, his sword, his shield, and I believe also his talisman in one fell swoop. So boom, that's it. Other characters drop maybe their armor set, or just their weapon, or just their shield, or weapon and shield, and then you gotta find their armor somewhere else, or, you gotta find pieces elsewhere in the world. My Silver Knight cosplay playthrough had to be done in New Game Plus because otherwise we'd have to wait all the way until Orlando to even start the cosplay. So that just wouldn't be cool. I'm going to turn off the frame rate mod. We're going to go back down to 30 just so that I can make this jump properly and hit his head. Boom! And now the frame rate goes back up to a reasonable number. I do want to talk, I think our discussion points for this playthrough, entire playthrough, not just this episode, but this entire playthrough, are going to be game design from the standpoint of a gamer, not from the standpoint of, not from the standpoint of a developer. And that may seem kind of strange, but when I say that, what I mean is game design elements and things developers do that gamers notice, that affect gamers, and things we want them to do and to notice that sometimes they don't necessarily notice. And in this edition, or this episode rather, not edition, I want specifically to talk about game design as it pertains to frame rate. This is an issue where a lot of people get worked up about it for one reason or another. Time to sip some hot black coffee. That's pretty good. You know, I like my coffee the same way I like my women. Hot. Yeah, my wife knows about those jokes. Don't worry, guys. My wife knows. She knows everything there is to know about me. Almost. Soul of a Lost Undead. My wife and I have been together for about 14 years, 15 years, going on 15 years, I think, now. So, we know a lot about each other. There's a song out there, I think it's called, I Know You Too Well to Love You, or something like that. And I understand that sentiment, but, you know, you gotta kind of back up sometimes and get back to basics. I also thought about pairing two topics for this playthrough. And the reason I mentioned my wife is I thought about pairing game design, alternating between discussing game design and discussing... Yeah, I guess we're fast rolling, right? Yeah. Alternating between game design discussion and discussion of relationships.
Hello.
And I wasn't sure how much we wanted to do that. Maybe people feel like that's too far off from gaming. But in several of my streams, I have noticed that people ask a lot of questions about this. They talk about it. They have concerns about relationships. I think it's something that affects nearly all of us in one way or another. Like, how many of us can honestly say, I'm not in a relationship now, I'm not interested in relationships, I never want to get married, I never want to have kids, I never want to meet anybody, I want to be by myself for the rest of my life. I don't think I've ever met anybody that legitimately felt that. I've met people that have said it, but then again, you know, they turn around and do something else. But actually, I don't think there's anything this guy has that I really care for. Let me take a look again. Great Heal is alright, but actually I'd rather just have Heal. Homeward is mostly useless because you can just buy lots of Homeward Bones. I mean, for 8,000, think of how many Homeward Bones you could buy for 8,000. And you don't have to have it equipped, taking up an attunement slot. Force actually has some value, more so in PvP, and Heal we already have, although we could get a second use of it and then get 10 uses instead of just 5. Heal is a great spell to start out with, especially as a new player, because over time you'll find that healing yourself is one of the most important things. I don't know what I need for the weapon in question. We're going to use Solaire's weapon, but in the meantime, let's go ahead and take a look at how many attunement slots do we have? Just one, okay. Let's level up Dexterity and then Faith. Hang on, how about let's see, Endurance. Okay, we're gonna run down and get the what's this thing called down here? The Astora Straight Sword. It's actually a faith-based sword, and interestingly enough, Solaire does not have any sort of faith element on his sword that you pick up from him. So we're gonna add it. We're gonna add a faith element to it and make it a faith-based weapon. But interestingly enough, there is a faith-based weapon you can get very early on. It's the Astora Straight Sword. It is actually pretty good for a starting sword. We may not have the stats for it, so we'll look at that. But yeah, I would like to alternate between these two topics of game design from the perspective of a gamer and real-life relationships. And in particular, trying to connect it more to gaming, like having relationships, not necessarily through online games or having a relationship in an MMO with someone you've never met in person. Just honestly, I don't recommend it. I just don't. You can meet people online, you just have to be careful with it, like you have to be careful meeting people anywhere, honestly. We're gonna run first to the soul and then we'll come back and do another suicide round to grab the Astora Straight Sword. But in terms of frame rate, the reason people get so worked up about it is I think it comes back to this concept of, quote, PC Master Race, unquote, PCMR. The danger in that is I think a lot of people have incorrectly interpreted PC Master Race, because what I don't think they realize that the origin, as far as we can tell, is not people who play on PC using it to insult console players, but actually quite the opposite. As far as I can tell, the origin is that it was created, or it seems to have been created by console players to sort of mock PC gamers. So when PC gamers used it, it was sort of like owning the insult. Like if someone tries to insult you, if a bully tries to make fun of you and call you a nerd, and instead of denying it and feeling bad or being like, I'm not a nerd, don't call me a nerd, instead you're like, yeah, I'm a nerd, I'm really smart, I like computers and stuff like that, I'll probably get a good job with lots of pay. So what's the problem? You know, that can kind of shut down bullies. It can shut down people who try to insult you when you own the insult and actually say, I don't have a problem with it. You're right, that's exactly what I am. Then at that point, most people will be like, oh, well, oh well, okay then. I mean, what do you say to that? You know what I mean? So it's dangerous to assume that when PC gamers say PC Master Race, they're actually saying anything legitimate. In terms of, they're not trying to insult anybody, they're not trying to say that they're better. And there's also this misguided notion that PC gamers have a unique sort of elitism that other gamers don't, and that's simply not true. During the PS3 versus Xbox 360 days, we saw many PS3 gamers, PlayStation gamers, insist on the vast superiority of the PlayStation 3. And from a technical standpoint, I do actually agree with them. I think the PlayStation 3 was ultimately more powerful than the Xbox 360. However, when the rubber meets the road, things oftentimes didn't work out that way. What ended up happening was, in order for you to see that superiority, did I just pass it? There's a little cave over here that has a soul in it, and I think I walked right on by it. In order to see that superiority, the game has to be programmed specifically to take advantage of it, and we found that in many cases... Where's that little cave with the... Well, whatever. I'm not going to worry about it. You can grab this free of charge. Nothing will happen to you. But to grab the other items in there, well, it's a little bit more risky. I think the second one is the one we want, the one that's deeper in there. But we'll go for it. Here we go. Oh, no, it's the other one. Get it. Got it. Good. Don't care that we died. Oh, I just forgot what we were talking about. Console gamers have argued from the earliest days back. I remember even the Super Nintendo Genesis days, arguing about who's got the better graphics, who's got the better this and that. So if you're going to accuse PC gamers of elitism because they claim to have better graphics, which, let's be honest guys, factually they do in most cases. I mean, very few console games have better graphics than their PC counterparts. One exception is even this game right here. However, the DS Fix mod fixes that issue. The graphics are better on PC by default, but not much better. With the mod, they are vastly superior. Instantly, you can tell instantly without even trying. But the reason the graphics are better on PC is for a variety of reasons. And mainly it's because it's more powerful hardware. Does it cost a little more? Yeah, in most cases it does. But for a PC gamer, that's part of what they do. They take that additional cost because they enjoy having the better graphics and it's worth it to them. You know, oh, great, we can already use it. That's awesome. Awesome. Okay, let's grab some other items around here. If, in fact, you don't personally care as much about the graphical fidelity, like having a higher resolution with anti-aliasing and SSAO effects and making the game look better so you can feel more immersed and have a nicer, smoother experience with a higher frame rate, then that's okay. That's not a big deal. But when other people talk about needing or wanting that experience, it's important not to degrade or insult them as if all they care about is graphics. You can care about graphics while also caring about other things, because all gamers that care about graphics care about other things. There is no gamer on the planet that's like, oh, as long as it's got good graphics, that's all I care about. I don't even care about the gameplay. All I care about is graphics. But that's sort of this misrepresentation that people have. Like, it's the straw man argument at its worst. Or at its finest, depending on how you look at it. I don't know why I'm picking these up. I don't even care about these. Wing Spear, we're not going to use them. But basically, it's the idea that you set up a straw man, this very simplistic unrealistic version of someone's argument, and then you knock it down because, well, you set it up to be easy to knock down. All they care about is graphics. No, it's simply not true, and it's never been true. It's not true now, never been true, never will be true. However, they do care about graphics in addition to everything else. So what we're really looking at here are gamers that care about graphics and everything else. These are not gamers who sacrifice gameplay for graphics. They don't sacrifice anything for graphics. They get the whole experience plus better graphics. It's an experience plus, not an experience in place of. Because how often is that really a trade-off? If a developer traded gameplay for graphics, which I don't really see that happening much, then that happened for everybody. So nobody gets one or the other better than the other. You know what I mean? It's like if a developer sacrificed developing better music, sound effects, gameplay to get better graphics, then that affects everyone who plays the game, regardless of the platform. Sure, the PC gamers might have even better graphical experience, but they're still having the same essentially lackluster gameplay. So it's important to look at the facts, the evidence, the realities here, and not get caught up in personal vendettas and spite and jealousy and this silly online rage that many gamers develop with really no basis to it. If there's a gamer out there who wants a better experience with graphics, how does that affect you? Like, why do you care? Why are you getting so mad at them because they talk online about wanting better graphics? So what? If you don't, that's fine. Just don't say anything then. Just be like, well, I'm okay without it, but that's cool if you like it. Then, okay, then we're fine. Everything's good. So what's the problem? And ultimately, there is no problem. Just stop talking at that point. And if somebody, you feel like they're pushing the issue of graphics too far, okay, so it's important to them. It's clearly more important to them than it is to you. So why do you need to be insulted by it? Why do you need to get angry over that? Why are you so angry? Do they get angry at you that you don't care about graphics? And if they do, they shouldn't either. What does it matter to them if you don't care about the graphics? Now, if it matters to one person and it doesn't matter to another, I don't see why you would intentionally try to interfere with their crusade to get better graphics. If someone is trying to get a developer to improve the graphics or release an HD texture pack or something like that, it doesn't hurt you. Just let them do their thing. If gamers are trying to do a petition to get a game ported to a console, to a different console, or to the PC platform, or from PC to consoles, what does it matter to you? Like, who cares? Just let them. Well, don't go making some anti-petition to be like, no, don't port this game over. It really, honestly, has virtually zero, if any, effect on you. So just leave it alone. There's no point to get angry about it. You know, if people want Bloodborne on the PC, I understand. I would love Bloodborne on the PC. It would be a better experience if they made it right, have a higher frame rate so you can get better control of the character. And that's what we're going to talk about really here, is why a high frame rate matters. Now, everybody knows that the higher the frame rate, the smoother the visuals. It looks better, it looks smoother, the animations are tighter. I don't know if that's really the word. Everything just feels better. If you're used to 30 FPS and suddenly get dropped into 60 FPS, it can look strange at first, but that strangeness quickly wears off, and you will never, ever, ever want to go back to 30, because 30 is inferior in many, many ways. And we'll talk about some other ways that I've addressed in other cases, but finally, there we go. Elevation, as always, can interfere with backstabs and parries. And it exists in all the Souls games, including Bloodborne, interestingly enough. So, we all know about the smoothness, the visual aspect. Is that important? It is. How important is it? Depends on you, personally. For me, it's very important. I want the best, smoothest, most visually appealing experience possible. Or reasonable, I should say. Do I want them to sacrifice anything for a better visual experience? Well, it depends on what that anything is. Certainly, I don't want them to sacrifice the gameplay. But this idea of gameplay versus graphics, I don't really think that's the case. If you pick gameplay versus graphics, how come you don't pick gameplay versus music? When have you ever heard somebody say, oh, the music in this game is awesome, but that's because they sacrificed the gameplay to get better music? You never hear people say that, but yet they say that about graphics. But you have to keep in mind, the art team that's working on a game is very rarely the same as the team that works on music or the other programming, the gameplay, the mechanics, the user interface, unless it's an indie title. A truly indie title. And whoops, that was my bad. in most cases, the art team on a AAA game, or even a smaller developer that's larger than an indie developer, like FromSoft, the art team is wholly separate. They're working on art assets separately from the people who are working on the gameplay. So there's no sacrifice being made. It's not like the art team somehow interferes with the other teams that are working on game mechanics. They're you know, the art team is working on the art assets, and the gameplay team, which they don't call a gameplay team, but the team that works on mechanics and other aspects of the programming, they're doing their thing. And I don't really see how one interferes with the other. You could argue that one team gets more of the gets more money, but if they're all working together simultaneously, unless they're laying one of them off, unless they're laying people off from the gameplay side, I don't see how the graphics side interferes with their ability to make good gameplay. And you know, I constantly forget that I have heal, so I should use heal before Estus. If, that is, I'm not in a tight bind. If you're in a tight situation, you do not want to use your heal spell because it's slow and it leaves you really, really open for backstabs and just getting hit. So in terms of frame rate, why do I consider 30 FPS insufficient for an action game? And I do honestly believe that it is. I'm not trying to be elitist or anything like that, because there have been many action games on consoles that have been 60 FPS. This trend to push down to 30 was more of a 7th gen console thing. It kind of came out, it became a big thing. It became the most popular frame rate. Popular as in the most common, I should say, not popular. It became the most common frame rate for games like this with the Xbox 360 PS3 generation. And the Wii as well, obviously. Why did it? Well, I can tell you why. Gameplay trailers and gameplay footage. In a trailer, in footage, you can't tell that that the game looks inferior, because in a still shot, in a still photo, the visual quality is all that you see. You don't see any movement. So the higher the quality, the better the photo looks. And that's how reviews started out on GameSpot and IGN and game trailers and these websites. They would have still photos with articles. Then, as video became more popular, the standard for internet video was 30 frames per second. YouTube just recently moved up to 60 frames per second. People are still doing 30 FPS videos. So when the videos that you were showing people of your game didn't go beyond 30, well then, I guess it felt like making your game 60 FPS wouldn't make a difference until somebody actually saw it in action. So for the purposes of marketing, 30 FPS was your limit. So for advertising, marketing purposes, 30 FPS made more sense to them because they could make the game look better, and therefore it looks better in advertising, and it advertises and markets better. However, once you get your hands on it, especially for an action game like Dark Souls or Bloodborne or, you know, God Hand or any of these games that require precise timing and action, 60 FPS is vastly superior. And some people say that 60 FPS is really a sort of archaic standard that came from CRT televisions, and that's true. But what we're not saying is that 60 FPS is the best. We're saying that it's better. Personally, I feel that the best you could get is probably about 120 hertz. I think once you hit about 120 hertz, most people have trouble telling the difference. Let's cover something real quick. Is 30 FPS more cinematic than 60? Absolutely not. Games are not cinematic. Games should not be cinematic. You know, you don't worry about controls in a movie. Don't worry about cinematics in a game. It's just that simple. Games should not be and are not cinematic. The more cinematic a game is, the worse it is as a game. Movies are cinematic. Games are not. That's a silly term. It's a silly notion that... Remember the FMV days, full motion video days, where they tried to make games that looked like movies? They were terrible. Terrible. One of the worst times for gaming because so many crap games came out that just looked awful. The more movie-like they were, the worse they were. Playing movie clips and all this stuff. So really, what you want is a game that plays well. And 30 FPS does not really play well. And in fact, if you're really going for more cinematic, you don't want 30 FPS. You want 24 FPS. Because films originally ran at 24 frames per second. They would have 24 images on the roll of film for each second. So once you put that actual film in the projector, 24 frames of the movie would pass through the projector's imaging. I don't know what that's called, but the projector's eye, or the light would pass by the light of the projector and project onto the theater screen. 24 of those frames would pass by in the span of a second. So because this became a style thing for movies, and movies you don't need to control, so you don't need to worry about controls, so it doesn't matter if the frame rate's lower, it became a stylistic thing. People got used to seeing it in 24 frames per second. Is it actually better? I would argue that the reason The Hobbit looked weird at 48 frames per second is because our eyes were used to the lower quality of 24 frames per second. As digital standards are becoming the norm and digital videos becoming the norm, we are moving away from 24 frames per second for movies. Why is that? Because we're slowly learning that if you get moviegoers adjusted to higher frame rates, they just look better. And when you go back to older movies, other than the feeling of nostalgia, they will simply look worse. I'm wondering if there's anything we need from the merchant over there. We could get the repair box, I think he has. But I think that's like 2,000 or something. Let's see if we can afford it after killing these guys and popping some souls. I'm hitting him thinking I'll rally my health back. This is not Bloodborne. Gotcha. Also, I think the parry system is absolutely superior in Dark Souls versus any of the other games. I would say parries are best in Dark Souls. The second best is Demon Souls, which is very, very, very close. I think Demon Souls parries feel just ever so slightly off, but not so much to really interfere with gameplay that much. Dark Souls 2 parries are by far, in my opinion, the worst. And then Bloodborne is before Dark Souls. So if I had to rate parries by how good they actually feel, how natural and how I think they are or should be, I would say Dark Souls, Demon Souls, Bloodborne, Dark Souls 2. Skipping all that dialogue and whatnot. I never buy repair powder. I used to buy one per playthrough if you look at my older playthroughs, but, you know, just... Oh yeah, the repair box is 3,000. I don't buy the bottomless box anymore because there's really no reason to, unless you just want to clean up your inventory. Other than that, there's really not much to worry about in that regard. I don't think we can get to 3,000, but let's see if that's something we can do. Is that 2,000? Oh yeah, there we go, okay. We'll buy the repair box. It's always good to have that on hand. I recommend buying it early, especially if you're going to use like a weapon like a katana or something, which can lose durability faster than other weapons. The wooden shield in here is interesting. Like I said, we're going to deviate a little from my normal playstyle, and we're going to grab weapons and go to areas we normally don't. The wooden shield is interesting to me, not because of its stats so much. It's fairly good against lightning at 65% block for lightning. Pretty good against magic at 40. 93 physical means it's really darn close to 100. So for all practical intents and purposes, you can almost consider it at 100% block. I mean, 93%, if you get hit for 100 damage and you're blocking with enough stamina, you'll take 7. That's like nothing. That's nothing to worry about. But for me, it's interesting because if you look at it, it is a really nice looking shield. I mean, look at that little dragon design on it. It's all scarred up. It's obviously been hit with swords and blades of some sort. It looks well worn, the kind of thing you would find on a soldier, but it also just kind of looks cool. I like the shape. I like the design, how it looks. It's just a nice shield in my opinion, so I'll start using it now. What was the East-West shield? Let's check it out. East-West shield was 88 physical. Even at 88 physical, if you get hit for 100, you'll take 12 damage. That's not that big a deal. So, at any rate... Oh, I got 12 Estus, nice. So there's some people playing online, clearly. Back to the frame rate thing. Excuse me. I'm gonna try not to cough too much. Let me mute my mic so I can hack up this phlegm. Okay, and we're back. Basically, the higher your frame rate, the more control you have over your character. Now, if you are playing a game like, say, Final Fantasy XIII, will it look better at 60? Yes. Will it play better at 60? Yes. Will it make a real difference in gameplay in terms of how accurate your controls are? No, because you're just picking options from a menu. those kind of games are slow enough to where the extra frame rate, the extra frames per second, don't really affect gameplay so much. It just makes it feel better. It does. It feels a lot better. It's smoother looking. It looks nicer. It just feels like a better experience. But oh, I forgot that guy does that jump attack. But for the purposes of gameplay, it's not a big deal. I would still rather have 60. 30 FPS in 2015 is still completely unacceptable. I would consider it. Well, I'll get to that later. But what you really want is higher frame rate in action games. The more action-oriented a game is, darn, the higher the frame rate in general. And I would say that the bare minimum you would need for an action game like Bloodborne, 60 FPS, bare minimum. You would, when I say bare minimum, what I mean is you would not want the frame rate to be built for anything less than 60. If it drops a little, that's understandable. I mean, the consoles are not that powerful. They have to be designed for people to be able to get a cheap gaming system that doesn't cost as much as like a PC. Because a PC, you should expect to pay about $200 more for a really good PC. It'll last you a long time. You don't need to upgrade once every year. It doesn't cost $2,000. All that stupid stuff that people say, PC gaming myths. But 60 really should be what you would consider the minimum acceptable frame rate. Unfortunately, nowadays, developers are pushing for 30, and I think part of that is just laziness, and the other part is the hardware is just not powerful enough. The Hollow Soldier Shield is one of the best shields in the game. I think people forget about this. What you cannot see here is the fact that not only is the stability awesome at 56, but the stability grows almost as good as the Balder shield. I almost want to call it the Balder side shield. The Balder shield and the Hollow Soldier shield are the two best regular medium shields. Now, when I mean regular, I mean if you're just looking for physical defense and stability. If you're looking for the best combination of physical defense, stability, and other defenses like Magic Fire and Lightning, I would say probably you're looking at the Silver Knight shield as being kind of the overall best. However, it's a little heavier. The Silver Knight shield is. I think it's an additional 0.5 on top of the Balder Knight and Hollow Soldier shield, although I'm not 100% sure, so if I'm wrong about that, please do correct me in the comment section. But, oh, we can still fast roll, nice. Yeah, to me it doesn't look that great. I'm not sure, what is this design on it? It's clearly a design of something, but I can't figure out what it's supposed to be. It almost looks like a stylized ghost, like a Halloween-style ghost or something. I just don't know. I mean, compared to the wooden shield, it has at base level 4 additional stability points. Stability, for those that don't know, means that you take less stamina damage when you get hit. So when someone hits your shield, how much the stamina is lowered depends on how much stability the shield has. So that's why your light shields, your small shields, when you get hit, you lose a lot more stability. Whereas your great shields, when you get hit, you lose a lot less stability. Or, sorry, a lot less stamina, because the stability is higher. Got him. Just twinkling? Man, what a jip. Oh well. So, higher frame rates actually give you better control, because if you think about it, for example, when I roll right here, the opportunity to roll again comes after I finish the roll, right? However, what people don't think about is, if you're playing at 30 frames per second, there are 30 frames in which to input action. And depending on when you stop, when the action stops and when it becomes available, you have to wait for the next frame of availability. The more frames you have, the faster you can put that input in. We're talking milliseconds here. If you're running a game at 30 frames per second, you see 30 frames every second. Therefore, if something is walking into your field of view, let's say something is walking in from the left side behind those barrels, at 60 FPS, you will see it roughly twice as soon, or 2 times faster. You'll see it sooner, because when it starts to enter the frame, the window in which you can see your game window, it'll enter 1 frame faster than at 30 FPS at least. At 120 FPS, it's now entering even sooner. So if you're playing a game like Counter-Strike on the PC, at 144 frames per second, you will see your target sooner and be able to respond and try to shoot them faster than if you're playing at 60, and much faster than if you're playing at 30. It does actually give you a competitive advantage. This is well known. So the fact that you can get a competitive advantage means it does make a difference in how the game controls. You would be absolutely stupid to try to play Counter-Strike in any competitive capacity at 30 frames per second. You just wouldn't be able to compete. Competitive gaming with first-person shooters is very, very precise. I mean, these are people that have timing down to the maybe 200 milliseconds, possibly even slightly less. I mean, they're coming down to the bare minimum of what a human being can respond to. The human being's response time between the moment you see something and the moment you can respond. A lot of human being response time studies have been done not on gaming, but early on those studies were done for a totally different reason, a much arguably more important reason, and that is safety. They were testing the human being's response time in terms of braking in a car. How quickly can a human being respond to someone pulling out in front of them, notice that someone's pulling out, and then hit the brakes on their car? Those were early response time tests. And I think I've heard people talk about how... I'm going to turn off the frame rate mod for just a second so I can get this hit right here. I've heard people talk about 200 milliseconds as a reasonable expectation for the average human being in terms of response time. So if you've got a delay of 100 milliseconds between pushing a button and getting a response, that would be I would argue it would be pretty bad delay, although I'm not an expert on the exact timings, so if I'm getting these timings wrong, feel free to let me know. I don't want to sound like a complete idiot here, any more than usual at least. But certainly, if you had a delay between hitting a button and getting an action in a game of 200 milliseconds, that would be really, really bad. Now, it doesn't sound that bad because 1,000 milliseconds is a second, and 200 milliseconds, I mean, it's 20%, right? But yeah, that would make a big deal. That would be a huge problem for your game if your input delay was that bad. An input delay? Oh, wow. It's been a long time since I've seen him drop the Demon's Great Axe. Input delay is worse as your frame rate gets lower. That's why when a game starts dipping in the frame rate, you can actually die in the game because the frame rate dipped and the game sacrificed control. It had to. It basically worsened your controls. Your control timing's messed up, your control timing's dropped, and it made it harder for you to deal with. Alright guys, so now we gotta find a way to kill Solaire here without dying. We'll talk to him to get the White Sign Soapstone, because I don't know if he gives it to us when he dies. I would imagine he does. I'm pretty sure he would drop it, but just in case, we'll just say yes, yes, and then pick it up. Okay. Unfortunately, if an NPC is not hostile to you, you cannot backstab them. So right here, we will not be permitted to perform a backstab. I'm going to try to kill him without the benefit of any upgrades, but that may be a mistake. We'll see. Because I kind of want to get this as soon as possible. Yeah, this is doable. This is very doable. Yeah, very doable. Okay, for some reason I remembered him being more powerful than this. Maybe it's having the Astora Straight Sword so early on. Got him. Many of you are saying, no, how could you kill Solaire? Okay, he gives you 2 humanity. So let's get that off the screen. The Sunlight Straight Sword, the Sunlight Shield, and the Sunlight Talisman, so everything he was holding. And then his entire armor set. That's crazy. I mean, this is... Of all the NPCs, does any NPC in the game give you more stuff? I don't think it does. I don't think there's any NPC that gives you more stuff immediately. Darn it, I think we need more dexterity. Yeah, we need 2 points of dexterity, so we'll keep using this for now. We are fat rolling, so we'll have to get Havel's ring as soon as possible here. But we have already made it, guys, to Solaire's armor set. Isn't that pretty cool? I mean, the only thing we're not using right now is his weapon, because we just need to pop 2 points in, but we'll do that as soon as we hit this bonfire right here. Oh, I'm so not used to this. The slow speed, so slow. Alright, peek around the corner. Don't ever forget to kick that ladder before you roll down. So slow, fat roll. And let's go ahead and do that 2 dexterity, and we're going to pop the rest into endurance to try to at least get to a medium roll before... No, not yet, darn it. I want at least a medium roll before we have to tackle Havel. We're going to pop these and hope that we can get some levels off them. Let me see how many souls we need to level up. 1,039, okay. Nope. Still the fat roll. I should probably just do the math. I'm too lazy to do 30.4 out of 57. So 57, well 50 divided by 2 is 25, then 3.5. So that's 28.5. That is a couple additional points that we don't have right now. We could just pop that off. Yeah, that would work for now. Well, let's keep popping these. I don't think we're going to be able to make the endurance to have his whole armor set on in medium roll right now, but we'll get the Ring of Favor and Protection rather quickly, and that'll help us out. And then after that, we'll try to go tackle Havel once we've got a +5 weapon. I would not dare try anything less than +5 on Havel, and even then, it would take a long time. Yeah, that's still it definitely won't allow us to wear his whole armor set at this point. Yeah, see, not even close. So we can do that for now. Hopefully remember to put that on later. And before I forget, switch it up to the Sunlight Straight Sword, which does not have any faith bonus on it, but we'll get one as soon as possible. So that means we'll be tackling a boss we've skipped in most of our other playthroughs, which is the Moonlight Butterfly. Well, guys, we're approaching that 45-minute mark. I try to make all these videos between 40 and 50 minutes. 40 minimum, 50 maximum, and we're at about 42. So with that, I will see you for the next edition of our Solaire playthrough. I think for the next episode, we'll discuss something about game design along with relationships, or maybe talk about relationships more. We'll see. If the relationship conversation just doesn't seem to really kind of match what we're doing here, or people don't like it, then we'll drop it. But we'll see what happens. But until then, guys, I will see you next time on our Solaire playthrough. And instead of doing the normal wave, let's do something more Solaire-esque. We don't have the full Solaire, Praise the Sun yet, but how about this? Later, guys.